This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the NEGOTIATEx podcast. We are continuing our conversation with Brian Ahearn, the Chief Influence Officer at Influence People. If you haven't already listened to part A of this show, you're going to make sure that you do that before. Continue to listen to this one.
Yeah, I think a lot of salespeople see their job as I need to deliver, I need to deliver a message to you. And the more times and the louder I deliver it, obviously the better it'll come through. How do you, with what you just described though too, how do you prevent that from feeling like a trap? Like you're luring me down a path and then you're going to, entrap me with, and gotcha. This is what I want. So how do you make that sincere?
I think that comes through authenticity, where it feels like we're just having a conversation. And so it's not like, well, I'm going to ask you 10 questions. Okay, I ask question 1 and I write it down. I ask you question 2 and I write it down. And you just feel like you're going through a checkbox. I should know who I am, the company I represent, and the product or services that we offer so well that I can just sit down with anybody anytime and I can have a conversation. And if I really have taken what I think are the top reasons to do business with us, and I have kind of framed them into questions and I've practiced a little bit, it should be extremely conversational, where you're not feeling like I'm asking you the question, knock, knock, knock on the door. Do you like to save money? Yes. Do you like to support local businesses? Yes. Right. And you feel like you're railroaded down this path that you don't want to go down, but you're finding yourself wanting to just close the door and go away. That's not what we're talking about. Yeah. We're talking about being an authentic individual who truly is trying to help the clients that you serve.
Does that mean sometimes you let them walk?
Absolutely. I had a Zoom session about a month ago. Somebody had reached out to me. They'd got my name from somebody. And then the owner of the insurance agency also was on the session. So we're talking about what I do. And I can see with the owner, it's resonating. I mean, he's smiling, he's nodding, I'm getting all the signals. Yeah. And then she says, and she's the one who's going to be in charge of setting up the training. And she says, I understand what you're talking about, but we need somebody who's going to put in a sales process and develop the metrics and do these things. Can you help us with that? And I said, no. I said, but I can recommend people. I said, that's not my expertise. But when you lay out your sales process and you have everything in, I can come in and help you make it better. Because at every step in it, I can show you how to apply these principles of persuasion. So that ended up being somebody that I wasn't going to do business with, but I'm very confident that I will do business with them in the future because the owner really liked what he heard. And I was honest with them about what I can and can't do and went so far as to make some recommendations. Whether or not they use them, I know they think that was kind on my part. So I'm not looking to close every sale. Not everybody is the right client for me.
Yeah. You said authenticity, you said honesty. I would also probably add there's some humility involved in what you're describing too.
Yeah. I don't want to, I've had some people who said, oh yeah, I got a contract. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. Okay. That's okay for some people. I'm staying awfully busy with the clients that I do have. I don't have time to necessarily figure something out like that. But I also, if I'm truly honest, and there's already experts out there, I may be able to build something, but it may not meet their satisfaction, where an expert could come in and help them build something that would make them go, wow, this is awesome.
All right, Nolan, I know you want to keep us moving on to the next principle. I got one rabbit trail though, because Brian twice now has said, and he just said it here talking about, consistency. He talked about the power of rehearsing. And that's something that, Nolan and I always harp on, Brian, is that there are these things are things we can practice before we practice them, right? We can rehearse them. What sort of guidance do you give or coaching you give either to clients or in trainings around rehearsing?
Well, I use myself as an example. When I'm getting ready to do a big keynote, depending on how much time I have, anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, I'll go through my entire presentation every day. And I will have it up on my big screen behind me so that I can see the graphics, and I will be walking around this room and I've got a clock out so I know exactly what I'm going to hit, and I don't miss my marks because I've internalized it so much. It's not, it will never scripted or memorized, but it will sound like, wow, this guy just knows what he's talking about. And that comes like anything, like just watch the PGA Championship yesterday. Those guys, their swing look amazing, but they're not naturals. They practice unbelievable hours. And when we have an opportunity to get in front of a group and influence them, we should never, ever wing it. It should be that we have thoroughly prepared ourselves so that we can give our best effort to that audience that we're in front of.
I'm going to pass it back to Nolan. That's beautiful, though, in terms of a take. When we have the opportunity to influence, never wing it, right? Really practice it. Thanks, Brian. That's wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now I want to get into principle number 6, and that is scarcity.
We touched on scarcity when we were talking about the reframing into the bonus. And scarcity is simply that we value things more when we think they're rare or they're going away. The moment that we think we may lose an opportunity, something in us is like, and we kind of want that thing more. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I don't want people to be fear mongers. I don't want scare tactics. I don't want them to come across as Debbie or Danny Downer, but I want them to honestly think about, how can I reframe what I've always tried to be rah, rah, rah about and say, I'm going to be honest with you. Here's the downside. If we don't take this particular action, implement this policy, engage with this service, what could somebody suffer as a consequence from that? And as long as you're being truthful about that, then you are framing what you're offering in the best light possible to help them make a decision that you really believe is going to benefit them and their organization.
Yeah, it's about value, isn't it, Brian? Because I define value as, the satisfaction of my interests and your interests, so fears, needs, concerns, motivations, how well we can do that together. And the scarcity kind of gets to, I think we can do better together than where you could go elsewhere. Does that resonate?
Yes. One of the things I talk about as an ethical influencer is it can't be just good for you to get the deal. Right. It's got to be good for them too. And so I always put it this way: good for you, good for me, then we're good to go. So if I'm creating a situation that's beneficial to both parties, if I have demonstrated value, and I learned this a long time ago, value is what I get divided by price. So, if I can get more of something for the same price, that's a better value. Or if I can keep getting the same thing and the price goes down, that's a better value. Now, you can't always plug actual numbers into that, but that mindset of making sure that I'm showing them so clearly what they're getting for what they're paying, so that they're like, wow, that's a lot more than I expected. Most people don't do that. Now they understand that they're getting a better value out of that system. So value can be what I get, could be here's what you will miss out on.
Yeah. And I like that you brought in, sometimes it's very clear, it's tangible, it's easy to find. Sometimes it's maybe more intangible. That doesn't mean we still shouldn't have that conversation. It's a similar conversation, just defined a little differently, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay. Now we are on to the last principle number 7, unity. So
unity says that it's easier for us to say yes to those who are of us, of our tribe, so to speak, or our family, or I'll use an example that you guys and your listeners will really relate to. My father served in the Marine Corps during Vietnam. And from the time I was a little kid, I could always tell when Dad met another Marine, especially those who'd been in combat, I felt like he was closer to them than me, his own son. And I never really understood it until I began to learn about this principle of unity. And unity, again, says that it's easier for us to say yes to those who are of us. And it's really because when you're saying yes to that other person, it's as if you're saying yes to yourself. I can use my dad as an example. When he helped another Marine, it was like he was helping himself. Okay. The satisfaction and joy that he would get out of that. If you go to something like AA, right, there's a tightly knit group of people who, if you're not alcoholic, you probably don't really totally get it. But when like a sponsor helps somebody who's trying to get sober, I'm sure that they feel an incredible satisfaction, like this is joy for me to help them. And so that's what unity is really about. Helping those other people is like helping ourselves. So I always tell people this is much deeper than mere liking. This is about sharing an identity. And we will always want to help those that we share an identity with above almost everybody else.
So what do we do when we don't? When we don't necessarily share an identity, we don't have an affiliation with the person we're trying to influence. Are there ways we can try to build it and establish it, knowing how deep this power, this principle is?
Being together and acting together are two ways that you can start forming unity. Acting together in a sense, and again, for you guys here in the military, you see that having individuals march in unison forms a cohesive unit. That is one of many steps in getting that group of people to form as a unit. So it's easier for people within that unit to certainly do or help one another than it would be for them to do or help for another unit. But a lot of that is you start moving in synchronicity, you feel like you're one. So if you can incorporate any of that. The other thing is sometimes just being together, either for lengths of time. Yeah. Sometimes people are like, wow, we've worked together now for 20 years. And if you really start thinking deeply about that, you go through a litany of things. You see people get married, have kids, maybe lose a spouse. I mean, the whole gamut of what we experience in a family, you can experience in an organization. So tapping back into that with some of those employees. If you don't have that length of time, one other way is when you are in highly emotionally charged situations, right? You will probably never forget how you felt. And so if the three of us went through something that was really dramatic somehow, we would always be able to probably instantly bond right away over that. And that memory could be something that could make any one of us go above and beyond for the other.
So I have two, one first a comment, and then I have a question to take us in a direction here. So first, I just wanted to thank your dad for his service. And Marines are always that way, right? You're never an ex-Marine, you're ex-Army, you're just a former Marine. Okay, right. ready to put it back on. And Marines have that great affiliation with each other. I do have a question and I think this of all of them, unity kind of raises kind of where we are in 2022, as well as some of the other principles you've talked about. Where does it hold? Do these hold even with what we see in terms of social media, technology, shifting modalities? I mean, whether it's Zoom or email or text and how we're communicating, do we just need to be more aware of these principles? Do they start to break down? What's your thoughts about, kind of from the technological advances we've seen in 2022 now, or where we sit in 2022, and it kind of impact on our ability to influence and persuade?
It can be good and bad, because people can use this information or this understanding in very positive ways, and they can use it in very negative ways. I've seen people, for example, they think they understand social proof, and they would put out something that says, hey, 97% of my friends aren't going to have the guts to take action on this. Will you be one of the 3%? I understand the motivation. They want to get people on board, but that message is working against you. If 97% of people aren't going to probably do it, then why should I? Right. So they fundamentally don't understand how to apply the principle. Scarcity, right? Everybody's fear mongering. And so I try to not engage in any kind of conversation online. If I saw one of you guys posted something and I was curious about it, I'd probably send you a message or send you a text or do something to connect offline. And I might say, look, I don't want to jump in the fray. People who don't know me, then they start making these accusations against me. But could I talk about your view? I'm interested to learn more. That's the way that you start overcoming some of this. And people right now are really looking for everything that makes them different. And we need to start coming back and make it a conscious effort to look at what we have in common. And I will give you an example. It's not social media related, but I get together with some friends who are Black, once a month, once every other month. And it's only to talk about our experiences growing up, our experiences in the work world. Tell me about this. Here's how it was for me. It's never about trying to influence them. It's about understanding them. And if more people would have those kind of conversations offline, in person, I think the world would be a lot better place.
Yeah, Brian, that's a very interesting, concept that you're implementing, you're actually doing in practice. This is very similar to along the lines of what Joe Bubman is doing, who we've had on the podcast. So I think that would be an interesting podcast episode for you to check out, as well as our listeners. If you think that, just getting together, not to influence, but just to understand the problems, just a little bit better. I think that's sounds like it's a pretty effective way to really, change the way you think, or at least become more aware.
Yeah, it's been powerful. And what we're trying to do now is invite others in, because we don't want to just continue to have a one-on-one conversation. So we start getting a group. Usually it might be 5, maybe 6 of us. We'll get together for maybe dinner or drinks and sit down and just share.
All right, Brian. So this is about the time in the podcast where we ask our guest to kind of describe a failure that you may have had in trying to influence someone or as a negotiator, but then also a success that you've had that you'd like to share with us. And appreciate you being completely honest. You absolutely don't have to.
No, the failure took place several years before I really began to learn about influence. And my wife and I, we were out buying a car. There was APR, like 5%, or I forget whatever it was. But so we start getting well into the paperwork, and there was this gentleman who wasn't using computers, he's writing everything down. So it's slow. It's as if they, just want to keep you there. Right. And at some point, when he writes down the APR number, I said, well, wait a minute. It said it was like 5%. Why are you using 5.2? And he's giving me the hem and the haw. And then the manager comes in and they do some stuff, and they're like, okay, it would have been $185. It's only going to be $190. And I'm like, fine, I'm not going to quibble over $5. But the reality was it was $5 every month for 5 years. Mm. So it was end up being $360 or something. If I would have been thinking in that moment, well, wait a minute, the price of the car just went up $360, I wouldn't have made that decision. I would have at that point called him on it and said, look, I think something unethical is happening here. And now if you don't lower the price by $360, then I'm going to walk, and you've got 5 minutes to make the choice. That's how I would handle it now. But I didn't know it then and paid more for the car than I should have.
Are unethical behavior still pretty rampant in the influence, persuasion, negotiation realm?
Oh, absolutely. I do my best to try to get people to think about how they can do it ethically, but it stands out. I mean, whether I'm watching a commercial or listening to a politician or watching the news, I'm like, it makes me want to go crazy sometimes, because it's so biased, slanted, and unethical, so much of what is coming at us, that you don't even start to understand it until you're stepping back, learning about the psychology, what it means to be ethical versus manipulative. And then your eyes are open, and it's not a pretty picture a lot of times.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for saying that. And thanks for the work you're doing around the ethical nature of this. Can we go back to Nolan's second question, which is what do you consider to be a major success with regards to your work in this field and application?
Biggest success I probably had was 5 or 6 years ago. I was at an insurance agency in St. Louis, and they were in a small suburb of St. Louis, and they wanted to move the agency into St. Louis. So we went through this 2-day workshop that I do, and at the end, we strategize about a real situation coming up. So dad, who owned the agency, 2 sons and daughter, were with me, and they said, okay, here's our problem. We have this building that we have all the plans for. We want to move in the city. The Rams just left. We want to support the city, but we're getting pushback from somebody on something like the Historical Preservation Society, or and they're contending over like the height of the fence for the parking lot and where the door is and certain other things that just seemed trivial. So as we talked about it, I said, I think you need to approach it this way, by telling that other individual, we both want the same thing. You want a building that the city will be proud of and will represent, the architecture and history. We want a building that our employees and our customers will be proud of. Can't we figure this out? So the next day they're going into the negotiation, and I was getting texts from them like, hey, we're thinking about what we learned and we're going to put it into play. What ended up happening was, at the most tense time in the negotiation, one of the brothers said, I think we both want the same thing. You want a building that you'll be proud of, so do we. And he kind of went into detail. And the person said, thank you. I've never drawn a line in the sand that I wasn't willing to cross. I appreciate that. And they got the deal done. The reason that was such a big thing for me is they've moved this family business into this building where they'll probably be for a generation or more. Some of the kids who might grow up and work there may not know who Brian Ahearn is, but I'll always be able to say, I helped you get into that building that your family and your customers and your clients and employees have come to for decades. And that felt really good.
That's a wonderful impact. Okay, so here's the next question then, Brian. That's such a wonderful kind of professional business example. Can you apply these things in personal life? You've said you were married for 34 years now. You got a daughter getting married.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Does it work at home as well?
It does, but I'll tell you, they use it on me, and sometimes I'm not even aware of it. So my wife many years ago said, hey, Joe, and that's my stepmom. She said, Joe's turning 65 and she really wants to go to Scotland to play golf. Would you mind if I went with her? And I said, well, yeah, I kind of mind because I want to go and now isn't the right time. And then she said, fine. Mind if I go to Florida for the week to play golf with her then? I said, no, I don't care at all. She comes back later and says, I never really wanted to go to Scotland. I just knew it would make Florida much easier by comparison. She goes, you teach this and you didn't catch that? And I said, my radar is not always up with my loved ones, but well played. So, and my daughter does the same thing too, where my daughter engages consistency. She's always bringing up what I've said or done in the past. Hey, Dad, you want to go do this? I might be like, nah, not really. And she goes, remember when you, and she'll bring something up. And then I'm like, fine, I'll go. So they're very effective at getting me to do what they want.
You know, guys, I think we're on to something here because we had the former FBI hostage negotiator, Gary Nesner, on the show. And he said the same thing, that he just can't get it to apply it in his own family situation, but it seems to always work against him.
I just take it, Nolan, I take it that Brian, Gary, and others are just, they're so good at training and teaching this stuff that, you know, it's, you know, when the student has become the master, you know, there's a quote, I forget it now, from Yoda and Luke, but that's what it is, right? So
absolutely. All right. So wrapping this up here, Brian, for all of our listeners who do end up wanting to pick up this book, what is like the one key takeaway? Why should they get this book? What are they going to learn that's going to help them be a better negotiator?
Usually what I will ask right off the bat when I'm on stage, I'll say, you know, by a show of hands, how many of you would agree that much of your professional success and personal happiness depends on getting people to say yes? And every hand goes up, because they know if they're leaders, they've got to get people to say yes. If they're salespeople, if they're customer service reps, we all have to get other people to say yes if we want to enjoy success at the office. And then they start thinking about, well, yeah, life is a lot more pleasant and happy at home when those around me more willingly do what I ask of them rather than with friction. So every hand is up. And then what I tell them is, fundamentally, what we're going to talk about is how to get more people to say yes to you more often. We're going to talk about how to influence people. So if any of your listeners resonate with that their success and happiness rests in large measure on getting others to say yes, that's why you want to pick up the book, because I put into practical application 7 or more decades of research into very tangible ways that people could go, oh, I clearly see that. I could do that.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great explanation. Again, influence people, powerful everyday opportunities to persuade that are lasting and ethical by Brian Ahearn. Pick it up or listen to the audiobook. Highly recommended both. First, Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And now this is a podcast that is all about elevating your influence through purposeful negotiation. So I'll kick it over to Aram for some key takeaways from today's episode.
Yeah, there's probably too many to list. I really liked the idea around being able to build a picture for people into the future, for better or for worse, what that's going to look like, action and non-action, motivate behavior that way. I like the idea around authority, that it's a combination of expertise and trustworthiness, and we can build both and make some choices there. I really liked what you shared too about influence as an opportunity, and we should never be less than fully prepared for that. So I think those are just a few ideas. I probably could keep going on, but I just want to echo Nolan's words, Brian, and just say thanks so much. We know you're very busy, and really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. This was really informative. I learned a ton, and I know our listeners will enjoy this too.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. Like I said, I love talking about it, so I enjoyed the conversation.
That's great. So that is it for us on today's podcast. If you haven't already, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the NEGOTIATEx podcast. Do it wherever you listen to it. We greatly appreciate it. It helps put this podcast in front of other leaders, which is why Aaron and I continue to do this for you, the listener. Again, really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to NEGOTIATEx.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.